Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective. This is Think Design Stories. In this series, we will be going behind the scenes on one of the most iconic laptop brands ever conceived and is still going strong. Today I am joined by David Hill, who started with IBM in 1985 and was with them until May 2005 when the IBM ThinkPad division was purchased by Lenovo. Since then, David has held several positions between those two companies, including the Executive Director of Design, the Vice President of Corporate Identity and Design, and the Chief Design Officer and Vice President of Experience Design. When it comes to ThinkPads, there are few people that know more than he does. With ThinkPad turning 30, and I'm sure as you know, there's a huge following of fans that have kind of grown around and grown up with ThinkPad. I've even talked to people who talk about their parents owning ThinkPads and now they own a ThinkPad. And there's this sense of community that kind of began to grow almost as early as the brand, but it is something that I think you and other people really capitalized on when you started to interact directly with the community. And that is so rare to see people in your position sharing and eliciting feedback. I know that you had a blog for the longest time where you had polls that you were sharing with the community and collecting information, and you were sharing what was going on within the kind of the design labs and what you guys were up to. And it really just created a sense of community. And I was wondering if you might be able to tell us a bit more about kind of how that all started and why it was important, or at least why you thought it was important for that to happen.
Sure. So shortly after the Lenovo acquisition of the IBM PC business, the chief marketing officer for the company decided we needed to have some social media presence because social media was becoming big. And so they brought a guy into the company by the name of David Sherbuck. And he was a really interesting character. I think he had really launched Forbes.com, and he was very internet savvy. And he lived in a 100-year-old house on Cape Cod. And he was just a really, really interesting guy. He's a big guy. He did the competitive rowing in college. I think he actually qualified to be on the Olympic team in the ill-fated Olympics where we boycotted the Olympics. Anyway, really neat guy, and I get to know him quite well. And he called me on the phone one time when he was visiting. He didn't live in this area, but he would come down frequently for various meetings and such. And he was in his little visitor office, and he calls me on the phone. He says, "Hey, can you come down for a minute?" I said, "Sure, what's up?" "Yeah, I'll tell you." I go down there, and I'm thinking, oh, it's always interesting to talk to him because he's got some story about something of interest. And he said, "Hey, we're gonna launch a blog for Lenovo." I said, "Okay, what does this got to do with me?" And he said, "I want you to be it." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I want you to be the blogger. I think you got the right voice for it, and you get the right topic." He said, "Nobody wants to read a blog about how many pins are on the circuit board, or what gauge wires in the power cord. That's just boring stuff." He said that design, that's where it's at. Everybody likes design. Everybody is bought a car or picked out a piece of furniture or knows something about design from competitors like Apple and such. And they're kind of snooty and impossible to read. They're like untouchables. I want you to be the Lenovo blogger, the voice of Lenovo. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty tall order. I've got a job. So I don't know so tell me what this entails. And he said, well, you're going to have to write something, maybe I don't know, maybe once a week, maybe twice a month, maybe every other week. Something you're interested in. You think people will find entertaining. I'm like, okay, so I would write this. And he said, yeah, you can write it. I can tell. He said, you can tell a story. If you can tell a story, you can write it down. But he said, sure, we could get ghost writers and people like that, but it won't be authentic. And people are too smart for that. They'll know immediately it's not you and you're just a phony. So he said, if we're going to do this, you got to be all in and you got to write it. And so I said, well, when do you need to know? And he said, well, I'm kind of hoping this week because we'd like to launch it. And I said, what would this be? How would you see it? He said, well, it'll be, get to it from Lenovo.com. And we had to come up with a name for it. But I've already asked, the branding guys what they think, and they got a name for it. I said, really, what is it? Design Matters. I said, I like it. He said, yeah, it's cool because it says that design matters, and it's about matters pertaining to design. Well, that's pretty darn good. And I said, okay, well, let me think about it. I'll get back to you later today. So I went back to my office and I kind of thought about it a little bit. And I talked to one of the designers that worked for me and asked them if they could make like a masthead, a theoretical masthead for this thing. But I was trying to get my head around it and imagine, what this might be. And this designer came up with a very nice white masthead, and it had RGB colors in the name. Design Matters. Had some little track point caps scattered about. It looked really cool, and I thought, well, maybe I should do this. So I went back down and I told him I'd do it. And so I wrote the first one I wrote, which was in 2006, was really about the relationship or the kind of parallel between the design of a motorcycle and the design of a laptop computer. And it was fun writing it. And it was fun. It was a great outlet for me to sort of express my ideas or my beliefs and philosophies about design that you were always in there, but I never really had a venue to do it. I'd always be in a meeting talking about why we wanted to move the power switch over 5 millimeters or something like that. It's kind of hard to talk about stuff like that, like what's the relationship between the design of a motorcycle and a laptop? I mean, people might look at you like you were crazy. We had a meeting, we had to decide where to put the power button like today, okay, but it actually does matter. It matters on a motorcycle where the switch is too. So anyway, it turned into kind of almost like a hobby, I must say. It became addictive that I could reach out and talk to people in a natural way, a voice that was like talking to people, like we're talking now. And quickly I discovered that there were people paying attention because there were comments, and not just like one or two, but I would get a lot of comments. Some of these blogs had hundreds of comments, and it blossomed, and I would write about anything you could think of. I mean, I wrote about what's the best way to clean your ThinkPad, because hey, I clean my ThinkPad all the time. And over the years, I've 10 years of experience cleaning a ThinkPad, so I know what works and what doesn't work. So I wrote a blog about it. The next thing I know, I got like people sending me all kinds of questions about this and comments. Oh, this is great, and then it got picked up in the media that I was writing this blog. It actually won an award one year for being the best corporate blog, and they talked about its authenticity and such. And it made me feel good because I put a lot of heart and soul in this, but I was getting something back, and what I was getting back was the sort of the customer advocacy, and I could share that directly with my team and the greater development team. So I might be in a meeting where we'll be talking about some seemingly mundane topic. And I would say, well, I'll write something on my blog about it, and I'll ask people what they think. Should we do this or that? And people would look at me like, wow, how fast do we get the information? I said, probably a day. I'll have like 20 comments about it, and I don't think there's any harm in asking. And so I started doing that, and I get a lot of comments. And then I asked about being able to put a poll up so we could collect the data. And so I started doing that with a simple, you could vote for, A, B, C, or D, and then they'd be tallied up. Sometimes I put a funny one in there just for grins, because I felt it should have a personality, because it really was an extension of myself. And so I like to do funny things. So I would build funny things into it. Sometimes there'd be a very complicated survey. Like you really wanted to get like respondents to take a survey, it would take maybe 15 minutes to do. So I would point to a website where you could go and take the survey. And there was some demographic information you did fill out. So next thing I know, we're like collecting data on this thing in kind of an interesting manner. And I used it extensively. Also, when it first started, one of my other demands, if you will, of Sherbuck was I said, I got to have pictures, because he showed me his blog. He has a blog that he writes, and it's quite interesting, actually. And I said, well, you don't have any pictures. I need pictures. I got to have pictures. Nobody's going to read a design blog about a picture. Come on. Go pick up a design book at Barnes and Noble. It's full of pictures. And so we had to create a way to get pictures up there, and then eventually ways to put polls and other such things to make the experience richer and richer and richer. Probably the most significant blogs I ever wrote there was one specifically about Skylight, which was a concept that we worked on with Richard Sapper to bring to market. And unfortunately, it never really made it to market. I wrote a whole story about the development of that and how it went from kind of a gleam of an idea to almost a product that's close to being real. And then probably the lastly was the work I did on trying to get effort behind this idea of making a retro ThinkPad. And it was like a whole mini series of blogs about that topic, because I really wanted to do it. And there were some limitations that we ultimately had to face with, but I would just go into these meetings and say, we're coming up on the 25th anniversary. This is huge. We should do something that no one else can do. So like what? I said, make a retro ThinkPad. What do you mean? A ThinkPad that pays homage to the original. It's everywhere. You can buy a Ford Mustang again. You can buy a Dodge Challenger. You can buy a Volkswagen Beetle. You can buy all these things that are a tip of the hat to the original, without necessarily being identical, because they can't make that car anymore for various reasons. There's laws about how vertical the front of the car can be, or the slope of the windshield, or the amount of horsepower. Nobody's going to buy a car with 65 horsepower anymore. All these kinds of things. But I said, we can make something like that. And we are the only company in the world that has a heritage that is strong enough and deep enough to do it. No one is going to go buy a retro Dell. What would it even be? Good luck. Let me know how that works out for you. A retro Apple, it would be hideous. The very first laptop was a joke, or that god-awful one that looked like a translucent toilet seat. What was it called? The iBook. I think
yeah.
I'm going to get in trouble. But my point was, we are the only company that can do it. We should do it as a celebration of who we are, and to people who are crazy for this brand will want it. just because of what it is. And it was great fun making it. I wish we could have gone further. I wanted to make it a 4:3 aspect ratio. Or one of the things I wanted to do. But unfortunately, it was a dose of reality that got into it, that I couldn't make everything the way I wanted. But it was I used blogging so extensively in that it was unbelievable. There was like no turning around. Now I got permission from high up people in the company to do it, because I thought, well, this is kind of risky. If I go say, hey, we're thinking about doing this, it's going to be in the news. I don't think it was 24 hours before boom, it was in the media. Like design leader at Lenovo wants to make retro ThinkPad. It was everywhere. And I think after a while, I showed a lot of the stats to the senior vice president. He said, well, I guess we're making that thing. we can't stop now. Well, that's why I told you I wanted to do it before I did it, because I don't want to, be the guy that lit the fire and then ran away. But that's all connected to this idea of customer advocacy and using advanced tools to really expose to our customers what it was we were doing and why we were doing it, and the thinking that goes behind it, and how you really make something like this and what's involved. And people got really interested in it. And I would have people send me old ThinkPads. This is the truth. People would send me old ThinkPads and say, I've had this thing for like 15 years. It's the first one I ever had. I can't bear to part with it. But I know sooner or later it's going to happen in the trash. If I send it to you, do you have somewhere you could keep it? And I said, yes. Send it to me. And then I took pictures of it and put it on the blog about that this guy sent me this thing. I put it on display in the design room because it shows that people care. I mean, it goes on. I had people asking me for autographs. I had people FedExing me their ThinkPad to sign it. And I did it. I'd still do it. And that's pretty cool, I thought. Still do.
It's funny you mentioned the shipping in thing. My oldest brother had, I'm going to get the name of the Shelby edition wrong, but he essentially had a 1980 Dodge Shadow, but it was like the Shelby edition of it.
I know what it is.
And I guess only 500 of them or something were ever made. It was a very exclusive car. I'm not entirely sure even why Shelby touched the Shadow of all things, but he did. And my brother, yeah, my brother actually took the glove box door, and he had it shipped off and signed and numbered by Shelby and then installed back into the car. And I'm like, okay, now your car is cool.
It's real. It's real. And it's very rewarding to discover that there are fans of that magnitude out there. And the blog was a great vehicle for uncovering that. I mean, I thought there were a lot of people who really liked ThinkPad. I had no idea how deep it was. I had no idea. And I've met people at CES. I did a special invitation only thing in a suite where I talked about the design of ThinkPad, and it was like unbelievable. These people who were so enamored with ThinkPadness. And I came to discover that a lot of this passion, or the additional passion, was fueled by blogging. It's like they somehow or other were given the tour of the back room at Disney World, and they wanted it even more. And so the power of that was so significant, not only in terms of just customer advocacy and learning what people wanted and what they liked and didn't like, and what would generate a blog with 200 comments versus one that had 3. And then these people that you uncover who are mailing you their old ThinkPad, or wanting you to sign their ThinkPad, or people buying books. I had people send me books in the mail and asking me to sign them. Like there's the different shade of blue that was many years ago. There's a whole bunch of these things that have just shown up at my house, or people have sent me emails and say, "Would you please sign this for me?" Sure, why not? Why wouldn't I? But it just shows you the power of talking about this stuff. Very pivotal and interesting to me personally. I was like writing them was fun.